Hey, Seahawk fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football and preview the Seahawks at Chicago Bears Thursday night football game. Welcome in, Keith. How you doing?
I'm doing good. You have a good Christmas?
Yeah, Christmas was a lot of fun. Started early in the day because we had brunch for the family we were hosting. So turned out about 14 people over. And then after brunch, we did the annual reindeer games. Everyone puts in a little bit to the pot, and there's cash and prizes for silly games. And so that was a lot of fun as well. We cleaned up after everyone left, and then had a fairly relaxing evening, save the fireworks that go off and kind of freak out the dogs. But other than that, it was great. How about you?
Oh yeah, I mean it's Christmas, so did the traditional Christmas morning thing with the kids, and then it's just a relaxing day. A lot of not being productive, which is enjoyable because I don't usually have those days.
Nice. So let's talk, generally speaking, about how you feel um, on the state of where we're at as far as where the team's at 8-7, what the expectations were at the beginning of the season, um, our remaining chances to kind of get into the playoffs, and what we need to do, and just kind of how it all fits together as a puzzle for you.
Okay. Well, I'm slightly disappointed. I think they were gonna be. If you look at my prediction, they were gonna be one game better than they are right now. Um, and therefore they would be in a position of control where I was not envisioning them being in control of the division. I put them in control of a wild card spot, and that they would have to beat a bad team and an average team, to ensure a playoff spot. And that's where I would like them to be. And instead, they lost a game they shouldn't have. Lost a few games they shouldn't have, but they lost one game they really had no business losing, and that was to a two-win team. And therefore, they're sitting here needing help to get in, and that is it's disappointing. I really felt this team was going to be better than this overall, but at the same time, let's put everything in perspective. This is the first year of a new coaching staff, and they need to reshape the roster. And in order to make that happen, for them to be this competitive this early in this process is abnormal. And so, yeah, just gotta like what we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll temper that slightly in that I thought, while it is a new coaching staff all the way around, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, same as the head coach, they inherited a fairly decent roster that was more talented than most new head coaches get in the NFL when they come to new teams. And so my expectation was a little bit more tweaks, have that Baltimore Ravens defense kind of come to life under Mike McDonald with the Seattle Seahawks in that version. And it took a little while to get there, but it finally did come around. I think right now they're ranked 11th overall DVOA, both against the run and the pass in equal measure. And that's a great movement from last year. I think this time last year we were ranked 28th in the NFL. And at
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of the season, Keith, you and I both said if this team can be a middling defense, because we thought the offense was going to be pretty good. Um, Middling defense, like top 15, maybe even, by the end of the year, they were trending towards top 10. This would be a really good team. And then the offense just never really came together this year,
Yeah,
and I think is below expectations,
well below.
well below expectations. And that's really kind of the disappointment. Like, we knew there was going to be some transition time with the defense, and that was going to take, in fact, even more time, like probably next year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that the offense would be kind of ready made. All the talent was there. Ryan Grubb just needed to kind of step in, create some plays to get these talented position players in a position to be successful, and it would be go time. Geno Smith come back, certainly good enough to run a well-oiled machine kind of offense in the NFL, and it just fell short of that. I don't think necessarily that Geno had kind of a statistically down year because of things Geno Smith was doing, except for maybe a few um, interceptions here and there that he wishes he probably had back. But the offensive line just never really kind of came together and gelled, and they tried different combinations. They had injuries. They were waiting for Abe Lucas. Connor Williams didn't work out at center. Uh, you know, on and on. There were just a number
Well,
of different issues, and there still are.
yeah, there
And
still are, and the offensive line is bad, but it is not the the only cause for the offensive problems.
correct.
One of the things that if we're going to talk about new coaching staff and whatever, the offensive play calling and play design and all of that has not play design's been fine. It's game planning that hasn't been. It hasn't been good, and there is talent on this offense, and that is not being utilized up to a degree in which it should be. Um, and that is part of the problem. I think that if we had a well coordinated offense, one that was taking advantage of the strengths of its players and finding ways to mitigate the weaknesses of the line, this offense would be significantly better than it is.
Hmm.
Um, and that is the disappointing part for me, is that this offense could be better with the current talent. Now, it's a flawed offense. They need to fix the offensive line. They need to um, you know give Geno a third receiver, because Lockett's production this year has been nothing compared to what it has been in the past. He clearly is kind of reaching that end point in his career. Um, but
And save nothing, and not saying anything about the running game, really. I mean, that kind of goes in hand with the offensive line improvement, but I think it needs to be said independently. We need to establish some sort of run game and
we
have
need to
balance in this offense.
try. We need to
Yes.
try and run the ball.
Yeah.
Against the Vikings, they had, 8 rushes for running backs and or for Ken Walker. Um, that you're not winning a lot of games that way, right? They weren't way behind and trying to throw themselves back into it. It was within one score for most of that game, and they refused to run the ball.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
setting
We
your offense up
average,
to do well.
and we per yards yards per rush, we're ranked 23rd. Overall rushing yards, we're ranked 30th. That discrepancy right there could be tweaked a little bit, and we could at least get a little bit of improvement. Like you said, just by trying to run the ball. EPA per play rushing um, is 18th,
Hmm.
so it's not too far away from being successful if we dedicate to it. There's just too many games I think where you just kind of give up on it. We get behind. This team is a come from behind team. We allow teams to get out in front early compared to where we're at, and that seems to dictate what Ryan Grubb is comfortable doing in the offense. It takes a lot of patience in the NFL, I think, to be a coach and to run a successful team, and it seems like the patience there is lacking. Just feeling, I think, anxious for him, and understandably that in order to get back in the game, putting the ball in Geno Smith's hands is the best way to do it. Unfortunately, I think when you do that, you handicap yourself without really even knowing it because teams can tee off on that. There's an expectation that you're going to throw and do, and you know, Geno's facing extra pressure on that. There's extra coverage because teams aren't worried about you running on them. so they drop another person into coverage, etc.
Well, and also if you look at along the line, you're going to see more stunts, you're going to see more twists, you're going to see more of that kind of stuff because that um, confuses the offensive line, gives you an opportunity as a defense to generate favorable angles for your pass rushers. Um, Normally, you wouldn't do that as much because you don't want to open up running lanes, right? Because that's what those things do is you lose gap integrity in order to get penetration. Well, if you're not running the ball, that gap integrity doesn't matter. And so you're just allowing the team to do more things to make life hard for your offensive line. And one of the things we've seen this year is them struggle with twists and stunts and those kind of things, which they get to see a lot of because they don't run the ball. Um, it also adds to a problem in that if you're not running the ball, then you're not setting yourself up to run play action. And this is the lowest uh, usage of play action team in the NFL, which is that's like unforgivable.
And
Like,
success rate for Geno is one of the highest when
yeah,
in play action
yeah.
plays.
And that's just like that's an unforgivable issue that this coaching staff has. That you have this weapon and you're refusing to even attempt it, and it just seems wasted.
Well, yeah, right. So, let's talk about the Bears a little bit, and then let's get back to the kind of the state of the franchise and some other things.
The
Um,
Bears.
the Bears. So, some
The
interesting news.
Bears.
Just yesterday or the day before, it was announced by Adam Schefter that reports are coming out that former Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll is interested in the Chicago Bears head coaching position for 2025. What do you make of that?
Um, Honestly, I think he is not ready to be retired and is looking for places where he can do that. I don't think he wants to go back to college and hit the recruiting grind and deal with the NIL and all of that because basically it's a very different game than when he left USC many years ago. Um, and so if he wants to coach again, he's looking for a spot. And Chicago actually makes a bit of sense for him and um, well, really anybody who wants to coach. You've got a um, what looks like clearly a franchise quarterback and a crummy roster. But it's not a completely crummy roster in that there are pieces. And so you're able to come in and tweak some things and um, find a few guys and make a big
Right.
turnaround. So it's going to be an attractive job, even if it is a team that struggled a lot in recent years. But new general manager, new head coach, they could turn stuff around fairly quickly.
They've lost at least 10 games 5 years in a row.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Well, they've lost 9 straight leading
They've
coming
lost
into
9
this
straight
game.
games coming into this game.
Yeah.
They fired their offensive coordinator, their head coach. Yeah. Ryan
hmm
Poles is the general manager. Thomas Brown is the interim head coach. They've got interim coaches all around. And our old coach, offensive coordinator, lasted half season.
Yeah.
And it's tough. It's a tough franchise right now, and they are a little void of talent, obviously. And it's going to take. I equate them to the 2022 Arizona Cardinals as far as where they're at on the roster with talent. They've got a quarterback that could potentially build around, but they need to surround him with a whole bunch of players, and it starts with the offensive line. Their offensive line is horrible. I think
Yeah.
when it comes to actually evaluating this game and looking for opportunities that Seattle has to win this thing, which they do need to win to remain in any contention at all,
Hmm.
And then they need to depend on the Rams losing to the said Arizona Cardinals on Saturday. But getting back to this thing, their offensive line is horrible. I think our defense could have a really nice coming out party just to kind of have a fun game where they get a lot
Hmm.
of pressure, generate some turnovers, all that kind of stuff. We shall see. I mean, they need to take care of business, obviously, but the opportunity is there because their offensive line is really poor. In fact, we could see Curhan, Jake Curhan, be the starting left guard in this game. He played last game, came in first for injury to Tevin Jenkins, and
Hmm.
sounds like Jenkins may be out. Um, yeah, they just have some injury issues. For
Every team
us,
at this
Ken
point has
Walker,
injury issues.
that's true. And
Um,
speaking of, Ken Walker's ruled out against the Bears. His fifth game missed by various injuries this season, so it'll be up to Charbonnet to get this thing going,
and McIntosh, he's
and
been
Kenny
shown
McIntosh.
the last few games they've been giving him a few touches, and he's making the most of them. Kind of like the way he runs. He's just so decisive. He just gets the ball, gets to the line, and just gets through a hole. And I like his running style, at least what he's shown recently, because there's not a lot of, you know, dancing around. There's not a lot of waiting for holes. He's just give me the ball, let me get upfield, and it's just different than what we've seen from the other backs, and so I like that. But you're right, it's going to be Charbonnet's game. He's going to if they're going to have a running game, it's because he's running the ball, and of course he has to be given opportunities to run the ball, and that lands on Ryan Grubb, and we'll see what happens. But um, yeah, I mean, this is such a winnable game. This is a team that's lost 9 straight. They're just everything's in shambles, and
Yeah.
at this point, the Bears are trying to get through the season. They would prefer to get through the season with no more injuries, so that if less people in rehab over the off season, and that's really the thing they're
So
caring about the most.
this Chicago defense is ranked 26th against the run. They're actually
Yep.
worse in pass defense. They're ranked 31st in pass defense. This could be again a coming out party for the Seahawks offense because they could find success running the ball, balance this thing, actually commit to the run and get it done in Chicago. Not sure what the weather report is this evening in Chicago, Keith. I don't know if you know, but um, regardless, I think establishing the run, getting that thing going, would be something that they should find success at in this game.
So
And then
um,
explosive plays, I think are there too.
the weather today is 42 degrees and wind.
Mm.
So
And then tonight,
um, yeah,
yeah,
I mean that's just um, there could be fog. That could be the problem.
interesting.
Um,
So,
but yeah.
so
I'm just
let's
looking
talk about.
at all of this. The Chicago's they've got it's not just Caleb Williams and nothing, right? They've got some nice receivers, including draft pick Roma Duze out of
Mhm,
Washington, who is maybe not having the statistical year that people want, but I think that has more to do with overall offense and
mhm.
him being a rookie. Um, but we know the talent is seriously there. And this isn't a game or an offense where you can just be like, oh yeah, they're 26, they're going to be bad. There's weapons there, and if you can't get pressure, and Reek Woolen has a game where he struggles in coverage again, there's reasons for worry. So, um, now I don't think that's going to be a problem. I don't, there's not enough talent to give me a lot of pause, but there are pieces. There are pieces of a very good offense here. There's not enough of them,
There are
but the
pieces,
pieces
they're
that
just
are,
not enough. Yeah.
yeah, it's not like okay, Odunze is a good receiver on this offense, but he wouldn't be worthwhile on another team. Now he'd be good on any team. And he's not the only one. So, like I said, there's pieces of a good offense here. There's not enough of them to form a competent offense, but there are good pieces, and I think that um, it's it's worth making sure that you uh, just play discipline and don't take the game for granted.
Show up.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
you got to show up. That's
yeah.
right. Yeah,
Unlike
Seattle's defenses should dominate this team, really. They're
yes,
ranked 26th in points. Seahawks is 12th in yards. They're ranked 31st. By any measure, they're a middling, almost bottom third in every category type of offense. And same can
mhm,
be said for their defense. And
yep.
so Seattle could win on both sides of the ball pretty handily in this game if everyone shows up and just plays within themselves and in a disciplined game. It'll turn out like every other Chicago game has in the last 9 games with the Seattle victory. Um, talk to me a little bit about. Let's shift focus a little bit and just kind of have a conversation about the Seahawks roster and some of the things that you're kind of thankful for. It's that time of the year where we reflect on the season, we reflect on the year. Um, the we had the coaching change, we had the draft, we had free agency, we've seen training camp. Now we've gone through the season. What are some of the highlights for you as far as what you're feeling good about, and especially as it leads into next season?
Well, I'm thankful for the team's attempt to reestablish or redistribute resources away from safety and into the defensive line. Um, they're getting as, as good or better play out of a couple of safeties, making a fraction of one of the two guys from last year. Um,
Who we're still paying
and
on dead money, by the way.
true. I mean, they're on the cap, but they're not. But yeah. Anyways, but you know what I'm saying? Like they're getting better play from the guys they've got playing now, and they cost a fraction of what one of the two guys played last year. And by doing that, by reallocating those resources, they were able to keep Leonard Williams, and they were able to use their draft pick to get a guy like Byron Murphy in there. And so they clearly have seen um, the problems that the old coaching staff kind of expected because they needed good safeties to run their system, um, and have put the resources where they belong. And because you win and lose these games on whether or not you can win in the trenches, and on defense they can win in the trenches, and that's part of why this defense has been successful. And honestly, if they hadn't been willing to just eat all that dead money and whatever, they wouldn't have been able to keep Leonard Williams. And this defense would not be good. It's just where
So
it is.
talk to me just a little bit about Byron Murphy and what your expectations were when he was drafted, and where he's at today, and the impact that he's had on the season.
Well, he's had an impact on the season. People will look at his stats and be like, "Oh, he hasn't done much." But you watch the tape. Defensive tackles don't always impact plays with the way things that show up on a stat sheet. Can you hold your ground and eat blocks and keep your linebackers clean? Can you, um, get that 1 yard of penetration and pushing someone back so that it changes the angles the running back has to take to get to a hole, um, and makes it easier for your teammates. You're not always able to uh, get clean through and make plays. That's not always your job. And so he's had a positive impact in a lot of ways. Um, he's also a rookie who is learning, and he's made a few mistakes. And one of the mistakes last week might have cost Seattle the game. Um, but at the same time, like he's shown that he can play in this league and that he's going to be good. And given an off season in a pro um, regiment in terms of like, strength development and um, all the learning that happens in your first off season of watching tape and self scouting and those kind of things. I think he's going to be. I still envision a guy that's going to be a dominant player. You look at Leonard Williams, and he was considered a major disappointment as a rookie. Um, and now look at him, like he's a force. And that's kind of what you're looking at with Byron Murphy next to him, is that he is making an impact, but maybe not the one everyone said, oh, this guy's going to be awesome right at the very beginning. Um, but I like his progress. I like what I'm seeing from him. Um, he's also on a line where there's when people are healthy, there's a decent rotation, and so he's not getting, maybe as many snaps as you'd expect from a guy drafted as high as he was. Um, but he's competing for snaps with Jerron Reed and Leonard Williams, and those guys have also played really well. So yeah, I mean it's going to be one of those things where when you've got a good rotation, that it helps everyone, even if it makes your stats slightly less um, inflated. So I like what I've seen from him. I don't have any problems with where he's at.
So one of the things I'm thankful for, and I was going to add to your discussion about Byron Murphy, and I'm not, because you pretty much just encapsulated the entire thing really well. On the offensive side, Jackson Smith and Jigba's JSN coming out and really
Hmm.
just taking that next step that you want to see from your sophomores, and in any season, and really just kind of solidified himself as the number one wide receiver in this offense, even as dysfunctional as it sometimes is. Geno Smith's been able to get JSN the ball consistently, game in, game out, especially the last 10. Like, he's been averaging 8 receptions and nearly 100 yards in each of those games. Right
Hmm.
now, he's got almost 1,100 yards, fifth most in the NFL, 6 touchdowns, 93 catches. He could eclipse, 100 catches easily, 1,200 yards, and a few more touchdowns to that. That would be quite a season for him.
Yeah, he's got
And
two
that's
games to
that's
go, and
amazing.
against and in this game, I would expect him to have a monster game. Because if you and this is one of the things where you look at what team defenses are doing, is they are not keying on JSN. They are keying on DK Metcalf. They are much more worried about DK Metcalf beating them than JSN. So there you're seeing um, double teams on almost every play, triple teams occasionally, all to DK Metcalf's side. And if you're wondering why DK is not having a statistically like amazing year, that's why. Um, but when you do that, you're taking your chances, and JSN is making them pay for taking those chances. Um, and have been expecting at some point this season for defenses to shift some of that um, attention JSN's way, and we would get bigger games by DK. But as we
I think you
saw,
saw that for one play, against the Vikings, where they left
yeah,
DK in single coverage for that touchdown.
yeah, and then they went back to um, back to double teaming him on every play. And so, I mean, I would like to see the Seahawks engineer some ways to get him the ball just to keep him in the game and allow those physical assets to um, really take off and use them. Um, but right now, he's been one of the league's best decoys. Um, and JSN's been the one who has benefited from that, and that's why he's having a monster year statistically. 100 catches and 1,200 yards is a fantastic year for any receiver.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and so, what I would say, like in there, it would be nice to see another receiver take advantage of the situation, whether it be Lockett or Cody White or Jake Bobo or somebody, somebody else step up and take advantage of the fact that you've got guys um, that are just demanding, attention and coverage. That means there should be gaps for you. Um, and maybe it's Fant coming off, coming in at tight end, and or Barner coming, for the same thing. Like someone else has to be able to take advantage of all of these throws and all the attention that DK gets on every snap. Um, just another weapon to balance this offense a little bit more, so it's not JSN or bust. Would be really nice to see.
So I wanted to talk to you about 3 players out of this year's draft that turned out to be really nice bread and butter type players in this offense, not stars, but guys that come in, play effectively, contribute, and turned out to be pretty good. Tyrese Knight at
Hmm.
linebacker, um, AJ Barner at tight end, who you just mentioned, and
Yep.
Satoa Lumea at right guard. It was played tackle in college, but was always going to be a guard. Talk to me about those players um, and your feelings about those guys going forward.
Barner's been a nice piece. Um, Blocks really well. Is a lead blocker, as an edge blocker. He's already showing in his rookie year that this guy can handle edge rushers in a way that most tight ends can't. Um, I think he's going to be a
And he
major
gives
asset.
gives you a little bit of
Yeah,
something in the passing game too.
he's got some athleticism, and I think he's going to continue to develop as someone you
That
can
touchdown
trust in the
last
passing
game was
game.
amazing.
Yeah. And so I think he's one of those underrated pieces um, that most fans might be overlooking at this point. Um, Tyrese Knight took over as a starter, and the defense got better. The kid can play. That kid is gonna be good. He's a fantastic running mate for Ernest Jones. I love that that pick and him. I think if they can get Ernest Jones locked up long term, which they need to do, I'm every day that goes by and they don't have that extension done,
Mhm.
is a little bit like, oh, why? Just get it done. But having those two guys in the middle as your two um, interior linebackers in this 3-4 defense is that's a strength. That's a major strength. And Knight's only going to get better as
Yeah.
he continues to learn. And so, love that pick. He's a starter and a guy that I think that you're going to continue to watch to develop and grow, and he's going to be a great player for you. Lume has been kind of a pleasant surprise. Not that I didn't expect the talent to come through at some point. I wasn't really sure we were going to see it this year, um, but mainly it's a surprise because Christian Haynes has been such a disappointment. If Christian Haynes had developed in the way that his college tape and all of his athleticism and stuff shows that he should. Lumea doesn't play this year, and Haynes is the guy that's there. Or maybe if Lumea does play, it's because of an injury to Tomlinson, and so he has to, get forced in there. But ultimately, um, Lumea getting his opportunity is because Haynes refused to take advantage of an opportunity. Um, and so that part's really disappointing. But the fact that Lumea's come in and held his own has been good. Um, he's been good in 2 games and bad in one in his 3 starts. Um, and honestly, as a rookie offensive lineman who is like a 6th round pick, if you're good in any games, you take that as a win. But the fact that he's been good in 2, and then just overwhelmed against Green Bay, there's a lot to like there. There's a lot to look at. His transition to the interior was always going to happen. He doesn't have the length um, or lateral quickness that you want out of a tackle in the NFL. And so that was going to happen. I still view him as a potential center. I think athletically and whatever, he could learn the position and be a major upgrade over Oluwatimi. But right now, he's the best guard that you're running out there. So you can't afford to move him because then you're back to not having any guards. And so he's been a great find. He's one of those guys, late round pick. He's been good enough that you'd expect the offense to show improvement with him being in there. Um, this is still a really young offensive line overall, and him, Olutimi's, getting his first chunk of starts. Abe Lucas basically didn't play last year, so he's still a young player. Um, Cross is in his third year, but he missed a bunch of time last year also, and so it's a young offensive line, and they need they need to find pieces that they can use going forward. And if he's going to be one of them, that's um, a great thing for them because they need at one point this year they needed an entire new interior offensive line, and I still
Yes.
think they need two out of three. And I'm comfortable with running Lumea out there next year and letting him continue to develop.
And hopefully a guy like Christian Haynes, we don't want to give up on him. He needs an off season. We don't know exactly what's going on there. Beyond physical the traits and so forth, something's there, but and maybe we'll learn more in the off season, but he should come back and have an opportunity to compete either at right guard or left guard
Hmm.
when Laken Tomlinson doesn't get re-signed, which seems unlikely to me. Um,
Yeah, why would you resign him?
Yeah, and
Um,
well, because he's $1.5 million, and you've got pressure on your cap next year. I mean, it's either going to be a guy like Tomlinson or another guy like Tomlinson, really, to kind of come in and at least have a veteran presence in there somewhere along the line. I would think.
if
Um,
they re-sign Cross, which I expect them to this offseason, um, then he becomes your veteran presence because he's your guy in the second contract. And he basically you're just going to have to run with that. What you're right, 1.5 million is a low cap number for a starter, so you can be like, yeah, let's do that. But he's not good. Um, he's not he's not good enough, and he's only going to get less good as he ages. And he's already not the player he was 2 or 3 years ago when he was a dominant player. And so at this point, you're just better off running a kid out, using another
yeah,
draft pick.
Anthony
Let it,
Bradford's in there too. Yeah, and we've got
yeah.
the draft. Yeah, so I do like that piece, the Lumea piece being solved. There's a few other things that need to happen in the offseason. We'll see what happens there. On the defensive side, you mentioned Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight. I think locking up the linebacker position is great long term. We seem to have some pieces there on the edge in Boye Mafe and Derek Hall. We're gonna have to make a decision, I think, on a contract this offseason. It seems like maybe there's room on this roster for another star player, another pass rusher that's just can overwhelm opponents. Opponents need to game plan for and so forth. Um, do you think that I'm correct there? Or do you think that we can just kind of continue to run this back, being the 10th, 12th, 8th best defense overall is good enough, and most of the focus needs to be on the offense in the offseason?
I think if you're the eighth best defense in the league, the focus should be on your offense. Um, and that, I mean, because you can win a Super Bowl with that level of defense, and kind of um, that's the gauge, that's the marker. If you're good enough, if your defense is good enough to win a Super Bowl, do you have to make it better? When you have limited resources, is your offense good enough to win a Super Bowl? No. So use your resources there. I think we mostly run this back. I'd like to see some changes, at corner. Obviously, Spoon is a legit player. Um, Job has developed nicely over the season, going from being an undrafted rookie to looking like an undrafted rookie forced into playing because of injuries to a guy that has been out there playing, you know, starting nickel corner level of snaps and not being the liability he was early on. Like you don't hear his name called much because he's been good in coverage and they're throwing the ball elsewhere. Um, so he's just been his development from how bad he was in his first couple of games to where he's at now has been phenomenal. I like that.
I found
Um,
it interesting at the time, and we saw those first couple of games, he struggled, obviously.
mhm.
But the coaches, what they were saying in public were, "We like Job, we're gonna let him compete." And everyone was like, "Is that even real? Like, why? Is he's not showing anything on the field?" Well, they were seeing some things in practice that impressed them. And how do you how do you explain Trey Brown's issues this season as well as, Reek Wallen?
Well, it's interesting because Reek Woolen is polarizing at this point. Um, Trey Brown has been a major disappointment. I don't know what happened with him. He is a guy that's battled injuries, and maybe that's just it. Is that he's just battled injuries enough and hasn't been able to stay healthy that he's reached a point where, he just can't do some of the things he used to be able to do. But he was a very pleasant surprise as a rookie. He came back when he's played at various stages over his career. He's looked really good, and then this year he just has not. He has not adapted to this new scheme in a way that's made any sense. Um, and when they were saying that about Job, um, I thought that was they were just trying to motivate Trey Brown, right? And they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna let this kid compete." So it's like, "All right, kid, all right, veteran, um, you want your job? Go earn it." But no, it turned out to be about Job, and he has really developed into a competent player. I like what we see from him. Um, I think Trey Brown's not with Seattle next year. I just don't think that he has found a way to integrate himself into what the team wants to do, and he's a replaceable player. As we've seen, he was replaced by an undrafted rookie, and so I think that yeah, that's been a disappointment. Back to Reek Woolen though. Woolen's been he's kind of it's weird because we talked when we were doing um, the guest spot with our British friends. They were talking about how Reek Woolen's a low effort player and gives up on stuff, and they were just hated on him. Um, and you look at like I know that Pro Football Focus isn't the greatest gauge of these things, but they've rated him really well in games, including last game against the Vikings. Um, they put him as one of the better corners. I see some sloppiness in his technique that needs cleaned up, and I wonder if the coaches can get him to do that. Um, but his length, his athleticism, those things are um, very rare. And
Well,
I
let
don't
me
know.
ask you this. So
I keep reading stuff about how good he's playing, which doesn't necessarily match what I see.
so let me
Um,
ask you this about Tariq Woolen.
yeah.
This is his 3rd season. He spent quite a bit of it injured. Let's just say 10 games overall in the 3 seasons. The last 2 seasons, he had Carl Scott being his position coach.
Hmm.
Have you seen enough improvement? Like, what does it say about Carl Scott when you've got a guy like Trey Brown, Nehemiah Pritchett never really developed this year. We haven't seen him on the field. Tariq Woolens, to me, I agree with you. Clearly ups and downs, maybe some frustration, some things we're seeing on the field, facial expressions, just getting lost out there a little bit once in a while. Um, Maybe not hearing the correct coverage and playing, out of step with his teammates. Um, what about Carl Scott as a position coach?
I don't know. Um, they kept him. He's the one holdover from the previous coaching staff, and it's because he's such a good teacher. That's what we were told. Um, and okay, um, the play from Spoon. and the development of Josh Jobe and the development of Kobe Bryant at safety, um, all
Yes,
indicate
agreed.
that um, there's something to that, right? I mean, Kobe Bryant was a lost cause. He really was. He he had really struggled and kind of failed as a corner, moved to safety and looked worse.
He was the
Um,
defensive equivalent of Justin Britt.
yeah, a guy they moved in an effort to let him save his career, and then he didn't go great. And then he came into this year and he'd lost his job, or any attempt at a job. And he all he did was play his way onto the field. And then, when Jennings got hurt and he became a starter, that he became a starter over um, Kayvon Wallace, the guy they signed in the offseason to be that third safety. Um, and so yeah, so he had already passed Wallace on the depth chart, and now he's passed Jenkins on the depth chart, and he's the guy. His development has been phenomenal.
And he's been a
Um,
team captain like three different times this season. They
yeah,
change every game, but yep.
yeah, he's been great, and um, you know, you can't watch him play and not like what you see. I mean, he's part of this defense's success and why they've been so good the last 5 or 6 weeks, um, is because of him getting inserted as a starter. Um, Considering where he was before this year, and even what we saw like in the preseason and stuff, like there was still a lot of struggles um,
Yeah.
between him and a guy like Job, who even when he was on the field early in the season, he did not look like a guy you wanted on the field ever. And he's developed um, really nicely in a short period of time into a good player. I say there's evidence to support that Carl Scott's a good teacher. Um,
And they just need to get more players that are uh, ad- adaptable into this scheme.
yeah, I think Reek Woolen is a guy with um, tremendous physical ability, which is obvious. Um, but maybe he's not a great fit for this scheme. Um, in terms of the way he plays and what he does. Uh, and maybe that's, if he's viewed as a really good corner around the league. And if you look at like the PFF rankings, they show that he's one of the top corners and all of that. Maybe use that reputation, trade him um, for a draft pick or a
Mhm.
draft pick and an offensive lineman. Um, and find draft a replacement find another another guy that can play over there. um, he's cheap for one more year, so there would be incentive to keep him for one more year. But he also becomes untradeable after that because his contract ends. So if you want to get assets for him other than him playing for another year, um, now is the time to have to do that. I don't know. I need to think about that more on what I want to do with him. I still see a lot of untapped potential, and a guy who's playing. He plays he plays really well at times. We'll give him that. He's really good at times. Um, and then the other mistakes just happen too. Um, so I don't know. Um, that's is the situation where, yeah, if you can trade him and get a good pick, I mean, would you trade him for a third round pick?
I think that there's going to be plenty of time to have all these roster discussions, roster construction, and draft, and all that kind of stuff. But I do see Seattle drafting a corner this year.
I
I
do
just don't
too.
know what round it is, what priority they put on it, how the draft falls, all that kind of stuff is going to be key.
Hmm.
But to get another corner, if you're going to keep Job and he's going to be in there and Witherspoon and we just don't know about the progress of Pritchett yet. Trey Brown looks like he's worked his way off the roster. Um, I think they probably need an infusion there of maybe a free agent guy or and a draft pick to compete for that other outside corner position, but we'll see. Okay, so let's finish up this show by a prediction on this game tonight.
Um, I I look at this game tonight as one that Seattle wins if they don't shoot themselves in the foot. Um, and that really comes down to what they've got to figure out. Can they avoid just repeatedly shooting themselves in the foot, which they've, especially on offense, they've done a few times. And but if they can avoid those kind of mistakes, it's their game. It just is. And so I think that as a um, any kind of prediction, I'm going to look at it from that point of view. I don't see that offense in Chicago doing much against Seattle. I think giving them 13 points is generous. I'll give them 16 just because it's a Thursday night game and it's hard and all of that. But um, I also don't see Chicago's defense being able to slow Seattle down. I think this game gets away from Chicago fairly quickly, and Seattle runs this like 31-16.
Interesting. Yeah, I hear what you're saying about shooting yourself in the foot, and Seattle. I think even if they shoot themselves in the foot, win this game, that you could have a turnover. Seattle's been susceptible to that. Gino's been throwing interceptions. We've got Zach Charbonnet and Kenny McIntosh running the ball. You could see Holani out there a little bit as well. It's going to be cold. It's going to be windy. I don't know what the other part of the forecast is, if there's any precipitation or not, but those could be factors. And I yeah. So the Seahawks defense, on the other hand, is going to be out for blood, and I think that they will smell the struggles of the Bears on offense and take advantage of those and kind of bait them into different things and so forth. So, and I see their struggles on their offensive line. I think they're missing two starters for this game, and that's not good for them. So I similarly
To
look
be
at Seattle being able to score in this game.
to be fair, their starters aren't there's the starters that are out weren't that good to begin with, so
It's true.
there
It's
shouldn't
true.
be that much a drop off between them and their backup, which
Well,
is
I'm just saying Boye
so.
Mafe could be
Oh
teeing
yeah.
off against Jake Curhan, and that could be favorable for Seattle. I'm just saying that.
Well, yeah. Um, I mean, Jake Curhan is a guy that can run block
Yes, that's
and can be
true.
powerful straight ahead. But he doesn't move laterally very well, and that was the problem. I do like that they moved him into guard because I thought that Seattle should have done that and moved him into guard and stopped trying to pretend he was a tackle.
I
Um,
agree.
so,
Yeah. So I see Seattle being able to score 30 some odd points. I really do. I mean, Seattle struggled to score points. Let's be honest. Move the ball consistently, get third down conversions, score in the red zone. But I think, a game like this with a defense like Chicago lends itself to the idea that Seattle can put it together, put some drives together, a little bit more consistent, let's see, than the Vikings game. I thought Seattle had like two or three drives in that game against the Vikings where things looked like they were very, very good, very consistent. Geno Smith was 5 for 5 on two of the drives that led to touchdowns. I can see more of that.
yeah,
On the defensive side, I can see them completely shutting down Chicago and not really allowing Chicago to get into the red zone,
the
and just
Vikings have a
kicking
very
field goals.
good defense. The Bears have a very bad defense. And so we should see a much more competent Seattle offense just
Yeah,
because of that.
and the offensive line, etcetera. They're not really getting to the ball. Montez Sweat is their guy that leads the team in pressures. Beyond that, they don't have much. So, yeah, Seattle, I'll say 28, and Chicago 9.
Yeah.
And then we just need to worry about the game on Saturday between the Cardinals and the
And the
Rams.
Rams.
And the Cardinals are going to the Rams. I don't know what to expect. Cardinals season's over. I don't know what they're going to do as far as shutting down players. I would imagine they'll still want to play and show up. There's some pride there. It's a division game. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I
And
would
anything can happen
expect.
in the NFL, but
Yeah, and I mean, and you're also looking at in the NFL, um, guys are playing for money, right? So, and I don't mean like, oh, they're getting paid, but it's like, what's your next payday going to be? And guys are looking at, okay, we're eliminated. Um, but if I get an opportunity and I go out and make a couple plays, I could get myself another 500 grand in the off season. Um, and so you see guys continue to play and step up and that kind of stuff. And also the way Gannon has been doing things down in Arizona, like I don't see that team giving up. I see them looking at finding ways to win and that kind of stuff, and knowing that they can play spoiler, that they can go into LA and screw up LA's season.
yeah, and nobody likes LA.
Yeah, nobody likes the Rams.
including
um,
including the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah,
yeah,
I agree. I think yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what
I am
happens. It's out
glad
of
that
our
this.
control.
I'm glad that the Seahawks play first though, because um, if the Seahawks had the later game and they already knew that the Rams had won and that Seahawks had been eliminated, then that changes this game quite a bit with the Bears, just emotionally.
Yeah.
And so having them play first, they're going to go out, they're going to get this win, they're going to put the pressure on the Rams and say, okay, right, you guys, you lose, and it's our division now. Um, and I like that. I like the idea that they're going to be able to get this win first, shift the pressure back over, and not have it be a
Yeah.
possibility where they're coming out going, yeah, what do we have to play for?
It
So,
is cool that we're, it's the 26th of December. We're still talking about being, in something. And
mhm.
I wish it turned out a little bit differently. That Vikings game was there to be had. There were earlier games you mentioned.
They
This team
lost
could
to
have,
the freaking Giants.
yeah, right.
The Giants have 2 wins.
Yep.
It hurts me. It hurts
Yep.
me a lot.
Well, we said it when we recorded the recap show on that was gonna come back. So, it
Yeah,
is what it is. Um, okay, so let's get out of here. We both predict to win. Let's go, have fun watching this game, tonight. We'll come back, and we'll talk about the results, and we'll preview, um, that end game, of the season against the Rams, next weekend. Um and we'll see if we're still playing for anything or if it's shut down time and we're going into next season already. So we'll find out.
mhm.
All
Yeah.
right, let's get out of here. Find Keith on Blue Sky at Myers NFL. You can find me same place. NW Seahawk, the show Seahawks Playbook podcast on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube channel. Leave a message, leave a comment, like the show, share it, all that good stuff. So Happy New Year and Merry Christmas to everyone. And we'll see you early next week to recap this game and to preview the next one. We'll talk soon. Take care. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.